President Trump is playing up his ties with North Korea a day after he ordered scaling back America's annual joint military exercises with South Korea. The U.S. president posted online that the joint military exercises were, quote, totally inappropriate and hostile to North Korea, who the president says has been, quote, unthreatening and respectful, adding that he wasn't happy with the drills because of his very good relationship with the North Korean leader Kim Jong Un. Mr. Trump told reporters that Kim Jong Un had responded to his message and claimed the situation was becoming much safer through their relationship.
Kim Jong Un has always treated me with great respect, and we met on numerous occasions, actually, two primary occasions, spoken and spent time. I understand him, he understands me. You're doing war games. I get along with him. You know, he didn't like Biden, he didn't like Obama, he didn't like anybody. But I get along with him very well. No, what I'm doing is making things safer.
Well, South Korea says those military drills with the U.S. are proceeding as scheduled, adding it hoped a relationship between Washington and Pyongyang could lead to meaningful talks. Well, joining us now live, Emma Chandler-Avery, the Deputy Director of the Asia Society Policy Institute's Washington, D.C. office and the Director for Political Security Affairs. What do you make of this move by President Trump, and also some of the reasons that he gave behind it?
Well, thanks for having me on, Carl, today. I think this is a pretty direct suggestion that Trump wants to re-engage with Kim Jong Un. He probably sees his this is a bit of unfinished business from his first term. So clearly this was designed to draw Kim back into talks with him.
Do you think we could see another visit like, we're seeing now, previously during his first term, that visit to North Korea? Do you think we could see something similar in his second term?
Well, Trump has made it pretty clear that he would like to do that. When he was in Asia last November, he mentioned a number of times that he would like to stop by since he was in the neighborhood, but there was silence from Pyongyang then. So I think the question is not whether or not Trump wants to have this summit with Kim Jong Un, but whether Kim Jong Un would welcome him.
We heard there from the president saying he has a very good relationship with Kim Jong Un. He described North Korea as unthreatening and respectful. What do North Korea's recent actions kind of say about those claims from the president?
Well, I think that our allies in the region would probably disagree. During Trump's term and previously, North Korea has steadily increased its capabilities, both its nuclear and missile programs, and now, of course, has this growing relationship with Russia due to the war in Ukraine. And that's really increased Kim's strength. He's not only getting, another economic lifeline from Russia, but probably getting more advanced missile technology, battlefield expertise from sending his own soldiers to Ukraine. So I think that Kim is feeling like he's really coming from a position of leverage right now.
If you're South Korea, what kind of signal do you think this sends to them? I mean, the president also mentioned in that Truth Social post that South Korea hadn't participated in the Iran war. Could this be seen, do you think, as some sort of retribution for that?
I think that Trump is clearly frustrated with what's going on in Iran, but that wasn't the major factor going into this. South Korea, in fact, has been part of the coalition that agreed to keep parts of the Straits of Hormuz open. But I think that for South Korea, it's a difficult moment, of course. I mean, President Lee has been very adept at navigating his relationship with Trump. He's also a supporter of reconciliation and with talks with North Korea. But I think that the timing of this, right as these games were about to start, probably took them by surprise. And I think that President Lee would like to be sort of part of a process where you talk with North Korea, but Trump prefers a direct leader-to-leader bilateral approach.
To what extent do you think that the Trump administration as a whole is on the same page when it comes to its policy there in the region? Only a few months ago, we saw the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. He was in the region. He was praising South Korea, saying that the strength of the alliance is critical for the United States. That's a pretty big about-face within a couple of months. Do you think there could be some different opinions maybe in the White House?
I think there are some different messages. We've heard from top officials, including the Secretary Hegseth, that South Korea is a model ally. It has increased its defense spending. It has great strengths in shipbuilding, for example. But I think that for President Trump, this is very personal. He has almost a sentimental view of his time with Kim Jong Un before. And I think he is looking for this to be part of his legacy as he faces his last 2 years in office.
Emma Chandler Avery at the Asia Society Policy Institute here in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to our panel now. Plenty to discuss. Joining us tonight, we have Democratic strategist Mally Smith and former spokesperson for the Republican National Committee, Elizabeth Pipko. Welcome to you both. Mally, just to start with you here, on South Korea, this kind of scaling back of these joint military exercises. Is this a move that you would agree with?
No, I think it's a mistake. North Korea is a pariah state that is incredibly unstable, and South Korea is one of our top allies in the region. And I think this shows that President Trump is operating in a way that is not stable and in a way that does not provide us lasting safety in the region. The two main reasons that we are potentially scaling back our help with South Korea is first, because President Trump is mad that South Korea didn't help us more in the Iran war. Well, no one really supported us in the Iran war except Israel. So if that's the rationale, we're going to lessen our cooperation with pretty much every country around the globe. And then second, it's because Kim Jong Un has said nice things to President Trump. And we see over and over that tyrants are able to flatter Trump, and that flattery affects his decisions. And those are not reasons to be making really important security decisions like this.
Elizabeth, what do you make of what Mally said there? Is this maybe a bit of flattery impacting the president?
Absolutely not. Look, it's a cheap shot that I've heard from Democrats for many years, and it's an easy one, but it's what people are left with when they don't want to try and give President Trump credit for what he's been able to accomplish. Look, I have a few thoughts on what's been going on in the Korean Peninsula, but for starters, I think it was today we found out that Kevin Rideout was not only freed after being imprisoned in Africa, but he was freed and basically got to reconnect with his family as the 110th American that Donald Trump was able to free in just this second term alone. There's a reason he's able to do things like that. It's because he holds in very high regard a relationship that he must have with both allies and adversaries around the world. I recall, like you would as well, Carl, in his first term, when people were really criticizing the president for the relationship that he was trying to have with Kim Jong Un, for trying to focus on denuclearization, which people thought was impossible. He was, the first U.S. president to step foot on North Korean soil, to meet a North Korean leader. After that unprecedented summit, by the way, they stopped nuclear testing for the remainder of his term. They also freed 3 Americans that they were holding hostage. This is what President Trump does. And again, it's very easy for Democrats to sit here in America and criticize him, but it was the South Korean president today who said he was happy with Donald Trump's move and actually hoped that the relationship that he had with the North Korean leader could lead to peace and stability in the Korean Peninsula. So again, Democrats want a cheap shot. They're always going to find it, but it's Americans who know exactly what Donald Trump is doing in the entire world.
Mally, what's your response there? I mean, has President Trump been impactful when it comes to the relationship and getting some concessions out of North Korea?
Look, North Korea is still a pariah state. They still are wreaking havoc in the region. And President Trump has not gotten any considerable concessions from the North Koreans. And if you want to look at what the American people think, or you want to look at what the international community thinks, the polling on both fronts show that they believe President Trump is doing a bad job when it comes to making America more secure and safer. Our public perception of the United States around the world is down under President Trump, and that is a measurable fact.
Elizabeth, how important do you think North Korea's support for Russia in the Ukraine war is in terms of any sort of calculus here? President Zelensky said that North Korea is now sending 50,000 more troops to that war there in Ukraine. He said that there are North Korean missiles being sent to help Russia in that war. So, is that something you think the president should take into account when he sends these messages to North Korea?
Not only should he, I would actually argue that I'm sure he has. I think for someone who, campaigned on things like this, on issues like this, on trying to be the first to step foot in North Korea and getting that done, now in a second term, campaigning on wanting to end not only the war with Iran that's been going on for 47 years, but also the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, which I have to remind everyone again did not start on his watch. You can criticize him all day long, but Russia only invaded on Joe Biden's watch because they knew that they can get away with it. But
the war is taking place
Trump,
now, Elizabeth. Sorry to interrupt, but the war is taking place now, and the fact is that North Korea is actively arming the other side. The U.S. supports Ukraine, and North Korea is supporting Russia.
Yes, and Donald Trump, despite, again, what people were warning about, has done an incredible job at supporting Ukraine. And on top of it, I would argue should try to form a relationship with a North Korean leader if he has a chance at getting the war to stop. Again, people have tried for years to criticize him and do things their own way. It doesn't seem to work. If there is a chance that he could have a second meeting with North Korea's leader, and North Korea's leader could then sit with him and decide he was not going to continue this or was going to play some kind of a role in helping him to end the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, wouldn't we argue that it was actually a brilliant move and just the right decision at this time, knowing the war has been going on for so long and nothing that has been done up to this point has worked?